Welcome to Try Again with Jen, a space where I share my fibroid journey. I'm your host, Jenna Brew, and today I'm going to walk you through the moment of my journey where I was seeking help, but I felt so unheard. My body was screaming that something was off, but instead my doctor was treating it as if it was whispering instead of shouting something is wrong. A quick disclaimer, I am not a medical professional. I am sharing my personal journey with fibroids. This is not meant to be a medical advice or treatment. Always please consult with your qualified medical provider for all your medical questions, diagnosis, and treatment. So here I'm going to talk about when my doctor just wasn't listening. In April of 2019, I went to visit Dr. Blue for a diflucan tablet. Now, just a quick recap, all doctors, clinics, hospitals would be renamed from shapes, colors, fruits to have different alias names to protect not only my privacy but their privacy as well. So in this instance, Dr. Blue, I'm referring to as my gynecologist that I was seeing at that time. So I had an appointment with her, but she was out sick. So the clinic had sent in another doctor, Dr. Red, which is completely fine. I completely understand if Dr. Blue was out. At least they weren't, canceling my appointment and having me reschedule. At the time, at least I was still being seen, but I wasn't given the heads up like, oh, hey, she's out sick. You're going to be seeing Dr. Red. I didn't know until the day of when I got to the office, after, like when the nurse takes like your vitals, that's when I found out I would be seeing Dr. Red. And to me, this was such a pivotal moment when I reflect back in my fibroid journey because, again, as I reiterated, Dr. Red was not my gynecologist. Dr. Blue was. She was strictly just filling in for her, which is completely fine. And again, I was going in for a reason that had nothing to do with like fibroids or birth control changes. I needed a diflucanac tablet. That's what I was going for. When I went to the appointment, the nurse said my blood pressure was up. Now, I don't suffer from high blood pressure. That does not run in my family. And I did explain to them that during this time, there was so much stresses in my life from school, work, personal life. Like, it was just chaotic. And I was assuring them that I was doing what I can to manage stress, but I understood my pressure was high from stress. I was going to therapy. I was utilizing the therapy that my campus offered. So once a week, my campus offered not only therapy where you can speak to a licensed therapist there or counselor, which I was also doing on top of the once a week therapy. They were offering like art therapy where we would do arts and crafts, and the students and I can share what was stressing us out or triggers or things along those lines, things we were working through. And at the end of whatever craft we were working on, she will point out how it was reflective of whatever we were going through. So it was very therapeutic and helping me relax. We were doing breathing, coping techniques as well. She would give us homework to utilize these tools we were learning in this art therapy. And again, I was also doing one-on-one sessions on campus to manage my anxiety and stress. So as I told Dr. Red, the nurse, like, hey, I don't have high blood pressure. She kept pressing on it, and she said it was because of my birth control. Now, at this point, I've been on my birth control for many years, and I had no issues. I was very comfortable. I liked the birth control I was on at that time. And she kept insisting because I was stressed, and the stress didn't look like it was going to minimize in any way anytime soon. She said, well, I'm not comfortable you being on that birth control. I'm going to switch you to the birth control pill. I was always very adamant about the pill because I forget to even take my multivitamin. Sure, I know I can put an alarm on my phone, but I was just never comfortable with a birth control tablet. And I was taking birth control, not necessarily to prevent pregnancy, it was to balance my hormones. And like I said, the birth control I was on, that time I was on it for years, I was comfortable, it worked for me, and I felt like it did balance my cycle and my hormones. I did see a huge difference while I was on it. I was no longer having like long, irregular, heavy periods as I did going through puberty when I was first menstruating. And I was very upset with Dr. Red because, again, like, I was like, why would she bring this up? She's not my gynecologist. You're just filling in, and this has nothing to do the symptoms I'm coming in for. She kept insisting, and unfortunately, during this time, I needed refills as well for my birth control. So I was out of luck. She told me no and put me on the pill. I was on the Norgestrone pill. And I had that gut feeling, like, don't do it. I was not comfortable, and I was reiterating how I felt. And Dr. Red was just dead set on, no, this is the root cause of blood pressure. Like, she was showing like, oh, no, you need to also follow up with your PCP. My primary care provider, I got a physical, and even my primary care provider forward my results to the office of my gynecologist office and reiterated to them that I don't suffer from high blood pressure and I don't need to be like on high blood pressure medication or anything along those lines. And I demanded to see Dr. Blue for a follow-up as soon as possible, which is what I did. I followed up the following month. So May of 2019, I saw Dr. Blue and I told her how upset I was, how discomfort I felt with switching my birth control. And she tells me, well, you're getting older. So at this point, I was in my mid, going into my late 20s. And she said, you shouldn't be on this birth control, so you should be on the pill now. Now, again, I'm not a smoker, and stroke doesn't run in the family. Like I said, I don't have high blood pressure. High blood pressure doesn't run in my family. So I was dumbfounded by why they kept insisting I shouldn't be on this birth control and why I had to change to the pill. And I told Dr. Blue, like, but I'm confused. Like, why would you change it? And she's like, well, I agree with my colleague. I agree with her, and you need to switch. And I went against my better judgment. Even though I had that gut feeling, don't do it. Even though I felt uneasy and uncomfortable. And it was an adjustment to get on that routine, take it every day at the same time. I eventually, got the hang of it. And I was using it properly. Unfortunately, I started noticing changes in my cycle. So from May, because it was like late April going into May when I started the birth control pill. Once it got to from May to November of that year, of 2019, I started noticing changes in my menstrual cycle. At this point, my cycle started to be 12 days instead of its usual 7 days. And it wasn't heavy bleeding, but that was scaring me, only because that wasn't my body's normal. And so I tried to follow up with Dr. Blue. And unfortunately, we all know the pandemic turned everything around. And unfortunately, it turned around my doctor as well. So in January, I couldn't get an appointment until January 2020. And I was switched to Dr. Orange. And what really upset me was the clinic I was going to did not notify me this change. It wasn't until when I got to the office, they tell me, oh, Dr. Blue has way too many patients, took on way too many patients, and you already stopped seeing her, which was not true. I only saw Dr. Red because she was out sick. And they say, well, she's not available. I think it was until like the following year, because that's how booked she was. And I didn't understand that. I was like, I've been seeing her for years. Why would you change my provider, my gynecologist, without talking to me, without asking me? They were just like, well, now you have a new one. Here's Dr. Orange. You can have your follow-ups, any questions with Dr. Orange. So I was hesitant at first, but, at least, it's the same clinic. So they have access to my chart, notes, all that, what's going on with me, all these things. So I let Dr. Orange know what was going on. I said, hey, my cycles are now longer. They're 12 days now. There is heavy bleeding, but like it's not alarming, but this is not normal, and I'm nervous. I'm scared. I'm wondering, is this the birth control? It has to be, because I'm telling her, I'm like, you see, it's the pill, right? So she tells me, I want to do an ultrasound. I want to check and confirm about fibroids. So this is the second time I hear about fibroids, or second or third time at this point. I was like, oh, but what does that have to do with anything? She's like, I don't think it's the pill, it's the fibroids. But she's like, I can't confirm nothing because I want to see where it's at to see if it's grown or not. So again, at this point, I had not followed up or Googled or done any independent research on fibroids. So I do the ultrasound. I did the abdominal and transvaginal ultrasound. And when she gets the results, she tells me, oh yeah, the fibroids are there. So now instead of 2, I had a third one. And she said the other previous 2 had gotten slightly bigger. But she's like, it's not a concern. Let's wait and see. And I reiterated to her, hey, I'm not comfortable with this birth control. It has to be the birth control, right? The pill's doing this, right? Because it wasn't a problem before. She tells me, you haven't been on it for so long. You need to give the pill a chance. She tells me it takes a year for my body to adjust to the hormones. And then she reiterates, well, you are getting older. So I took that to account. I'm like, well, okay, my body's not like back when I was a teenager or my early 20s, but I'm like, how much different can it be going into my late 20s? What is, like, how much has my hormones had changed? I'm thinking to myself. But, I took a step back and I'm thinking, you know what, she's right. I haven't really necessarily gave the pill a try. Like, I've been taking it consistently at this point. But I said, maybe because I'm so adamant, I just want to point fingers at it. I said, you know what? She's right. Maybe I need to give it a year, to adjust in my body. Again, I went against my better judgment, because from 2020 to 2021, that whole year, the bleeding had gotten worse. It got into more than 12 days. And at this point, I was getting heavier days of menstruation. And at this point in 2021, I started getting clots. Not the normal tiny clots you would see that they're the size of like a penny or a dime. They started looking like a nickel and then a quarter. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, something's wrong. This is scaring me. Okay. And I tell Dr. Orange, I'm like, listen, I'm scared. I'm bleeding more. It's more than 12 days. Now it's 14 days. Now it's 18 days. Now I'm having these weird clots. I never had that. What is this? She tells me, okay, do another transvaginal and abdominal ultrasound. I do that. And the results come back the same. The 3 fibroids, and they're just getting slightly bigger. Not huge, maybe by a centimeter or so. And I'm confused at this point. I'm like, what is there to do? She tells me, there's nothing you can do. That's normal. That's part of getting older. That's part of your hormones changing. It's just, I guess, part of life. That's how she makes it sound. At this point, I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, is it the pill? Is it the fibroids? She's like, we don't know. That's what she tells me. I don't know. At this point, I got fed up. I was annoyed. Okay, ladies, I was so annoyed. I said, no, what is this? And then I also, like, I have high pain tolerance. I could handle cramps. At this point, no, 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 no. These cramps were like, out of 1 to 10 was turning to an 11. I'm talking about I was in fetal position. I've never experienced something like that. I said, no, something's got to change. So in 2022, I go back to the same clinic. I said, I want another opinion. I want to change gynecologists. So I see Dr. Green. I said, no, no, no. I'm going to see a new doctor, okay, because changes need to be made, because I'm just done with this. What is going on? And even though I kept getting, in a sense, the same results, like the reports kept coming back, there's a fibroid and it's getting bigger, but there was nothing educating me about it. Like, the doctor wasn't saying I can do X, Y, and Z to shrink it, or X, Y, and Z is causing it to get bigger. It was just like, oh, it's getting a little bigger, but it's like making it sound like it's not a big deal. But obviously my body's screaming something's wrong. Like, why was I bleeding for 2 going on 3 weeks? Why was I having heavy, big clots, okay, that look abnormal to me, because they were going from the size, like I said, of a dime or like a penny to a quarter at this point. So I'm scared. I'm like, no. And then the pain at this point, I was in fetal position. I said, wait a minute, that's not normal for me. Like, sure, I had cramps. I dealt with it. I would use a heating pad, take a ibuprofen, call it a day. Here, it was, something was wrong. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have like the root cause. I didn't understand what was happening. So I was hoping Dr. Green will have answers, and not just answers, because I was tired of hearing the same thing. Oh, it's fibroids. You have fibroids, and it's getting slightly bigger, but there's something we could do. Let's just wait and see. I was tired of let's wait and see. If I heard wait and see one more time, I was going to have a flip table moment. I said, no, 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 no. So Dr. Green makes me do another ultrasound, the transvaginal abdominal ultrasound. And this is the part where I'm so heartbroken when I reflect back. Because when she confirms, okay, you have fibroids, and it's just getting slightly bigger by a centimeter or so, she tells me, you just need to lose weight. At this point, I was putting on some pounds, and she tells me, well, change your eating. I'm like, I'm not eating junk, and cut off sugar, cut off coffee, and I was gaining some weight. I was getting very depressed at this point. So much was changing in my life. And she just tells me, well, you don't lose weight. You have to lose weight, and just wait and see. And I told her, is it the fibroids? But I was like, but why am I bleeding like this? I don't understand. Because the weight's not bothering me. It's my menstrual cycle. Something's wrong. She tells me, just wait and see. Just make another appointment the next 6 to 8 months or a year. And she's like, we could keep monitoring it with an ultrasound every year. And my mind was fixated at that point. I was like, it has to be the birth control pill. At that point, I said no. I went off on her. I was like, you know what, Dr. Green? I think it's the pill. It has to be. She tells me, well, you didn't give the pill enough of a chance. How? What do you mean? I've been on it since late 2019, and we're in 2022. I think I gave the pill a nice grace period, if you ask me. And it just feels like things are getting worse. What do you mean? I was so mad at her. I was like, you know what? I am dropping it right now. I am not taking it tonight. I'm not going to refill it, nothing. And she gets a little stern with me. She's like, oh, but it's to prevent pregnancy. I was like, I wasn't using it to prevent pregnancy. I was using birth control to balance my hormones. And you know what? At that time, I wasn't seeing anyone. I was like, I don't need that. I don't need to prevent any pregnancy. I think I'm okay with this decision. I'm comfortable, very comfortable with this decision. And I dropped the pill. And you know what? That was the last conversation I had with Dr. Green. That was the last time I was in that clinic. After that televisit, I just cried. I just remember I was just crying and crying out of frustration because I just felt dismissed. Because even though, sure, I was getting testings, which is the ultrasound, right? And the report kept coming back, the fibroids. But I didn't fully understand what fibroids were. Looking back now, I didn't understand the serenity of what was happening to my body in the early stages of the fibroids, because like I said, they weren't huge yet. They were coming from 1 centimeter to 2 centimeters to 3 centimeters, so it's like the size of a blueberry, a little bigger than that, like it was growing a little bigger than that, but not huge yet at this time. And I didn't understand. And what was heartbreaking was, you know, these three doctors, these three gynecologists that I saw, they were all women. And I felt like there was lack of empathy of what I was comfortable and familiar with my body, what worked for me. And I just felt so totally dismissed when I kept saying, but why am I bleeding this way? And their answer was, well, you're getting older. Oh, but you did put on a little weight, that's why. Oh, okay, so I changed my eating habits. And at this time in 2022, I was blessed to change jobs, so I was less stressed. I was going to more frequent therapies. I was having therapy sessions, and I was making changes in my life to minimize what I thought was causing this, and it wasn't changing. And that's what was heartbreaking to me. I was getting frustrated. I'm like, why am I bleeding longer days? Why is there clotting? And then I'm feeling bloated all the time. I don't feel like myself. Why do I feel so tired? And I was so frustrated. And let's not dismiss also constant ultrasounds. I mean, they're very mentally, emotionally, they're uncomfortable. Sure, the technician, she's very, don't get me wrong, the technician, she was professional, always. She never ever made me feel uncomfortable. But let's be frank, it's a procedure where there's a probe, it's pressing on your bladder, you're holding in your urine, it's uncomfortable. And I was constantly getting these tests done, and the report is right there. So why wasn't I properly educated as a patient? Looking back now, why wasn't there more solutions offered to me besides, well, okay, just lose weight? And I was trying. I was changing my eating. I was trying to work out. And it didn't lighten my menstrual cycle. And I was highly confused, and they just wanted to write off, well, you're getting older. It's just part of getting older. And I was just done. I think I was going to lose my mind if they told me do one more ultrasound. I was going to be like, I don't want to. I mean, no offense. Like, yes, I'm doing all the right things as a patient and doing the tests, showing up for my appointments, making follow-up appointments, tracking my symptoms and reiterating to the doctor, what are my symptoms? What are my concerns? Why was there no solutions? I felt like I was being trapped between knowing and unknowing because, yes, they gave me an answer and the reports right there constantly right after each ultrasound I would do, fibroids. Okay, but I didn't know it really was the fibroids, and I wish I was more educated. And honestly, looking back now, I don't know why I didn't do research on fibroids. I think I started to very little bit, and that's why I was trying my best to change my eating, but I noticed still things were not changing after these few years. I was like, why? My symptoms was evidence enough that something was wrong, and somehow that wasn't enough. It felt like it wasn't being taken seriously. And looking back now, it affected so many things. It wasn't just, oh, I'm menstruating, I'm bloated. Like I said, I started having cramps that were quite intense. I'm in fetal position with the heavy cramping that was unusual for me. The fatigue I started to feel. I was urinating a lot as well. I couldn't hold my bladder. And I just didn't understand. And everyone's just saying, well, no, because you put on weight and you're getting older. And I'm sitting there like, what? I don't think so. And I felt like other women weren't going through this. I'm like, I'm surrounded by women my age when I'm at work, when I go out, and I'm not hearing them bleeding all this time. I don't hear that. What's wrong with me? That's all I kept thinking. And it just felt like nothing made sense to me. I felt so minimized. And I'm so angry that there's a lack of proactive care. That was, looking back in my whole journey, it was that moment. I wish I advocated for myself more. I wish I fought harder for solutions. There are moments I wish I've done more research to educate myself, because I took for word like the doctor knows all. And in my mind, I was like, oh, the doctor had all the solutions. But here I was stuck in the middle with kind of no solutions. It was just like, okay, lose the weight, but it didn't guarantee the bleeding will lighten up. And she wanted me to stay on the birth control, even though the birth control pill, even though I was bleeding all that time. And I was telling her, why am I bleeding so much? The previous one I had a normal quote unquote period. Why can't I go back on that? No, because you're getting older. You're soon going to go in your 30s. No. And I would sit there like, but why? I don't understand. And looking back now, I wish I could tell my younger self to see the signs when maybe the doctor or the care they're providing just wasn't right or enough for me. And this experience taught me how to advocate for myself and what to do if I feel dismissed. Because like I said, my symptoms, that was evidence enough. The reports coming back didn't say nothing was normal. My uterus wasn't normal. It had fibroids. My menstrual cycle was not normal. Something was wrong. But their approach, each doctor, those 3 gynecologists' approach, was let's wait and see. And that is something I regret, because the more I waited to see, the worse the symptom got. And I don't understand. Wait to see to what? Wait and see for what? I never asked them, wait and see for what? I wish I asked them that when I was younger. What's the what? What's the, let's see, what are you trying to see? What are you trying to look for? What are you trying to validate? Because I felt like my symptoms were not validated. My body's experience was not validated. That something was wrong. Sure, at this point, it didn't hinder my life in any way, but it kicked my butt years later. That it really hindered my life, mind, body, and spirit. And that's why when I reflect back, this was such a pivotal moment where, I wish more was done, because it was in this moment where, looking back in my journey, the wait and see unfortunately caused more harm in my overall health. I really deserved real answers. I deserved more solutions. You know what? Hell, if the doctor said, I don't know, I would have appreciated that. You know what? I don't know, but I'll point you to a specialist. You know what? I don't know, but hey, I will recommend you to so-and-so doctor. I wish that was done. As a patient looking back, I wish, you could be honest and just say, I don't know, but let's find out together. I don't know, but let's try X, Y, and Z. I don't know, but I will refer you to my colleague or this clinic or this doctor. I wish more was done, because at this point, I didn't want to try again with that clinic or any of those doctors. I just said I was done. But if you feel unheard, you're not alone. Please keep advocating for yourself and keep asking questions. I want to say thank you so much, ladies, for listening. And if this resonated, please share and subscribe. If you have fibroid stories or questions about my journey, you can reach me at tryagainwithjen.podcast@gmail.com, because together, let's keep trying.